Welcome, engineers. My name is Travis IQ, and today we're going to talk about Garmin and ransomware. Yikes. More news, right? On the heels of the Twitter news and all this other stuff, Garmin was hit with a ransomware attack. Yes, this was about a week ago. Garmin was the victim of a ransomware attack, specifically the Wasted Locker ransomware. This was reported by Bleeping Computer. It showed up on July 23rd, and it affected Garmin's services, cloud backup services, and their aviation services. Things like Garmin Connect, Fly Garmin. Yeah, scary stuff. So as a cybersecurity and networking channel, these are the things that we like to see from an examination standpoint. From a professional standpoint, these are the things we don't like to see. If you're in the field, you're probably not happy with me watching this going, Travis, I don't like to see this at all. I agree with you, right? But it gives us some talking points. And I will say, right, so Garmin is not the only organization that has been the victim of ransomware attacks or malware in general. Target, Home Depot, Panera Breads, pick your poison, right? These things are pervasive, and security events like this are going to happen. At the end of this talk, I will give some policy context for what we do when incidents do happen, because this is a fact of life in the current IT world. It just is. So this isn't the end of the world for Garmin, obviously. And actually, I think that it was Brian Krebs in his Twitter feed talked about how Garmin has expressed little concern about the ransomware and the effects on their system from a stock price perspective. So they don't anticipate users voting with their dollar to not use their service as a result of this ransomware outbreak. And to be honest, for historical context, right, Target, Home Depot, Equifax, nobody's voting with their dollar traditionally when it comes to ransomware, when it comes to service outages, unless they're pervasive, and when it comes to data exposure. So your PII data being leaked, which we can talk about at another time too. So interestingly enough, some other facts about this ransomware attack were the Wasted Locker virus or malware, right, is actually a piece of malware that's usually utilized by an evil group called, or a hacking group called Evil Core, formerly known as the Dridex group. This is a Russian group of hackers. This run by a Russian guy here. Actually, this is a Wired report from late 2019 where they talked about the U.S. The DOJ indicting this Russian hacking group as well. So they're not on the radar. And interestingly enough, the malware is usually customized to the target, and in this case it was as well. So if we take a look, these are some screenshots posted by Bleeping Computer of the malware on Garmin's system, right? Garmin Wasted, right? Encrypted files here, as well as a notepad document, right? Your network is now encrypted, and so then you would also think, right, and this makes a whole lot of sense, that if the ransomware is specifically targeted to this organization, a large multinational corporation based out of Kansas City, that the ransom requested is going to be significant. Why would I think that? Because there are really two mechanisms of ransomware. One is hit everyone and ask for a small amount and hope you get paid on a lot of incidents. The second is target high-value targets and request a lot of money from those high-value targets because you anticipate them having to pay the ransom because it's such a large effect on the system. And you can guess which one this was. This was option number 2. The reported amount, although not confirmed by Garmin, is $10 million. Traditionally, these, over the last few years at least, have been requested in cryptocurrency. This actually comes on the heels of another huge ransomware from an Argentinian telecom, and that Argentinian telecom was requested $7.5 million payment, and that payment was requested in a privacy cryptocurrency known as Monero. Again, the only reason I mention the payment method is just because it's an interesting fact. I don't think this necessarily has anything to do with the method of payment, right? It really has more to do with the malware that was installed and utilized, as well as the organizations that were victims. Right? That's what we're more interested in from a securing standpoint. Yeah, really interesting stuff. As of the 27th, so that was 5 days later, there were reports of that $10 million request. So the idea then is, from a cybersecurity perspective, right? We talked about what categories these malware fall into. Let's talk about some other variants of ransomware. So WannaCry is a great example. Petya, NotPetya. These are great examples over the last 6 or 7 years. There's all kinds of variants, and there's all kinds of targets, right? So I said there are methods to target multiple users, to target individuals and ask for large amounts. You can target municipalities, you can target corporations, you can target individuals. All of these, right, are examples of variants of the utilization of this malware. So we have examples of this in the real world as well, targeting municipalities, the city of Baltimore, the city of Atlanta, 50 municipalities in the state of Texas. Now, the target in that 50 municipalities, they originally thought that it was a coordinated attack. In fact, it wasn't a coordinated attack. It was actually a managed service provider, an MSP, that was affected. So things to think about, that sometimes even what appears to be a coordinated attack is actually an effect of the implementation of IT. Right? They were all using the same MSP, and that managed service provider had their files encrypted as a result of a ransomware malware. This happened to corporations, corporate groups as well. So there was 50 or 100 dental offices that had dental files encrypted as a result of ransomware outbreak. This was also the result of a managed service provider who was managing the back-end IT infrastructure for a number of dental offices. Yeah. So this is a pervasive issue for sure. So then the question is, right, what do we do? What do we do to prevent these? Now, there's a number of things that we need to think about here from a preventative standpoint. And we have Petya, WannaCry, Wasted Locker, any of these things, right? A few things. So one, bleeding edge. So these are defense in depth concepts. Bleeding edge, users, layer 8 of the OSI model. Education of users, making sure users understand not to click links, how to identify spam emails, how to identify malicious URLs, these types of things. Making sure that your users are educated enough to at least be the first line of defense. Also, technical implementation, preventing these things getting to users. Spam filters, content filtering, making sure that they're not redirected to malicious websites, all these types of things. So there's technical implementation and education of users. And you would say, well, Travis, that sounds like prevention of malware in general. It is, but it's going to specifically protect you against malware outbreaks like encrypting files and ransomware. The second would be the defense in depth model, taken from a technical perspective, which is implementing a assumed breach model, right? So network segmentation. And there's a number of ways that we can facilitate network segmentation. We can facilitate it at layer 2 in switching environments with VLANs and port security and things like this. We can facilitate it at layer 3 with routing and firewalls. We can facilitate it at layers 4 with stateful analysis and above with content filtering, even internally. So there's a number of things that we can do, but the idea is let's prevent this, assuming that there is going to be a malware outbreak at some point internally. And that's the assumed breach model. And then finally, if we know that these things are going to occur, then we also have to recover from them. And so I said at the beginning that we were going to talk about recovery policies and continuity and these types of things. So I'm not going to go into a bunch of depth about policies associated with incident response. However, there is a subset of business policy associated with incident response, right? Which is your incident response procedure, your IRP, or your incident response plan, right? How we recover from these incidents, who is in charge, the order of contact, which teams are involved, all of these things. And in large organizations, they're more thorough, and in smaller organizations, they are less thorough. There is also a subset of maintaining continuity in my organization, right? So business continuity plan. And this is actually very important when we're talking about Garmin and their response, because some of that continuity was lost. They lost services associated with their aviation services, associated with their cloud backup services and cloud data retention, all of those things. So both business continuity as well as incident response, and then also what we do afterwards, which would be something like after action reports. Yeah. So responding to the incident, maintaining continuity, and then after actions and lessons learned. And so this is a kind of a holistic approach, a number of topics that we've identified here, but really it's within the context of news stories of the day. And so on Tuesdays, we'll be doing deep dives into tech. On Thursdays, we'll be doing news of the day. To that end, engineer, break things, and have fun.